This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Whole Horse Podcast. It is so good to be back. I am just really enjoying this new energy flowing through me and inspiring me to bring back some of my favorite guests, including our guest today, Kerri Lake. Thank you for being here.
Alexa, it's so much fun to be back here with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I feel like I got to know you so much more last year. Kerri was one of our guest mentors for the Whole Horse Apprenticeship, and she was like, what would I call you in that program? You were just like this beaming light, and she showed up for all the webinars, and she was just this wonderful, inspiring amazingness in the apprenticeship. So
Thank you. You know, it was such an honor for me because here's this opportunity to be among all these gorgeous people. And yeah, okay, I have a title of guest mentor, but there was so much to learn, and just listening to where everybody is, what they're exploring in themselves, and how they're bringing that to the ponies and the people, how people listen to their horses. It's nonstop learning and nonstop expansion. So it's such a gift just to be among everybody.
Oh, it was a gift to have you there. Every time Kerri would just have this big smile on her face, and then she'd be on Zoom pressing love, the heart button.
Little overactive with the Zoom heart.
It was really great. And you have no idea, like that. I've had webinars where I've talked to myself the whole time, like nobody showed up. It's an awkward moment to do that. And so there's just this beauty in like having people not only show up, but like be really engaged in the content and the work and the horses and like what we're doing there. So yeah, I so appreciate that, and I'm happy that you're coming back this year as well.
Thank you so very much. I think I'm noticing with the different groups of people that I get to play with, more people are taking like a learning opportunity, that was air quotes, a learning opportunity. And rather than going to learn the material that's being presented, I mean, that's part of it. But more and more, I see people actually going for their own self-awareness and to discover more about themselves in relationship to that information. You know, it's like, okay, here's a step A through X. Now, how would I apply A through X? Like, where does my uniqueness come into it? And that's just unending beauty to me. I mean, that's sort of the whole point of having more than one of us on the planet, right? It's because we can say the same thing, but it's going to feel different coming out of each of us. And it's priceless. It's absolutely priceless.
Yeah, it is such a, I'm sure the people, my listeners are feeling this, like there's a lot available, right? And this, like in terms of learning experiences and online experiences. And so, yeah, learning, we almost are having to learn as we go how to engage with material in that way, right? It's so different than going to like a clinic where we take our horse and it's like this very concrete event of 3 or 4 days or whatever that we're there doing that thing. And I think it's, there's a new kind of level of understanding and learning how to engage with that material. I don't know if you find that, Kerri.
Definitely. To me, it looks like learning how to learn, or learning how is it that I learn, which might be different than the way you learn. or the way he learns or the way she learns, you know. It's we all, most of us, probably everybody listening to this podcast, you know, went through some version of industrial schooling. And whether it's public school or private school or whatever, it's a paradigm of you sit down and you learn what you're told to learn, and you learn it the way you're told to learn it, and then you have to repeat it the way that they want to hear it, whether or not you've learned it.
And if
And
you don't learn it, you get a punishment of some nature.
exactly, exactly. And then the cascades of shame and defense and blah 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 blah, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're all preaching to the choir here, because that's why we do the work we do, is to, you know, facilitate freedom from all of those cascades. But with this, all these opportunities we have to engage information from different people, some people are teaching in a linear way that, you know, is A plus B plus C. I mean, anatomy, right? There's
Yep.
not a lot of interpretation there. It's like, okay, this is a gluteus maximus and this is a gluteus medius, right? Like, there's stuff that is perfectly linear, and there's stuff that is perfectly nonlinear, which is the intuitive, the sensory, the multidimensional, that, thank goodness, more and more people are more aware of these days, and we can
Yes.
talk about, right? But then there's every flavor in between. And so to me, the question always comes back to, who am I in relationship to this information? Can I recognize, is this, can I bring my linear capacity to this learning? Do I bring my nonlinear? How do I let them complement
Mm.
one another? Who am I when I'm listening to this information? And what I've found is, the more I listen, not to try to get it right, not to try to learn it, but to discover, who am I in relationship to what I'm learning? What am I bringing to this learning? It
Mm.
it it changes things to, from just like scratches on a notepad, to a symphony that you see it written down, but you hear the music while you're reading it. And that's like the integration of the linear and the nonlinear. It's just, it's, to me, how we were designed to walk on this planet.
Mm. Wow. I love that, because I think, I've noticed for many people, and myself included, I was a superstar in industrial learning processes. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because my overachiever was just kind of
Yeah.
off the charts.
The
And
intellect you have. Yeah.
the way that my mind works can be very linear. So I know it is a kind of ironic that I run like online programs and things, because I find them sometimes challenging to engage with, as someone that kind of needs the person with the whip at my butt, right? And I've had to kind of resource myself and shift to a place where I can learn without the fear of punishment or
Amazing.
other things happening if I don't
Without
prove
harsh
myself,
consequences. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. What is it that motivates you now, if you don't have the, you know, the whip behind you? Where does your motivation come from? I
I
mean, what lights you
really,
up to be in
yeah,
motion?
I really have to play into my curiosity place and and it doesn't always happen. Like I could sign up for something, oh, I kind of draw back from it. And then I know that others can relate, where they fall enough behind, they start to feel guilt and shame, and it disengages from the learning process. And so, yeah, there is this part of me that kind of has to like hold myself, in a bit of a pace still, and give myself goals around it, because I still have that part of my learning. And I think
Mm,
that's still shifting of like, okay, like how can I find my own, way with this outside of that
totally.
intellectual space and that driven space. But it's kind of, it's kind of fun to combine, not fun, but like it works for me to combine the two. So for any of you out there that are working with like online formats and you're having a really hard time engaging, try even like putting things in your calendar or like giving yourself a little bit of a goal. If you're the type a little bit more like me, that it's like there's a that little bit of the achiever driven, I need the a bit of a strong arm to make this happen. Isn't it so interesting how that parallels our way of learning with horses too, right? We were shifting out of this place of like strong arming horses into things and like,
Yes.
okay, now what does learning look like? Do I need a piece of chocolate every time I do something?
Click chocolate, click M&M,
You
M&M,
did great.
M&M.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, it's a work in progress, I would say, Carrie, for me. And
Oh,
and I would love to hear from you. What is for you, what motivates you outside of, being strong-armed into learning things? What
yes.
really kind of inspires and motivates?
Oh, thank you. My through my entire life, anytime somebody would offer to strong arm me in any respect, for me it was like, okay, peace, I'm out.
Yep,
Like,
done. Mm-hmm.
this is not what I'm here for. And it literally, before I had that kind of like relaxed clarity about it, it looked like I would just shut down.
Yeah.
And I could not function. My systems were wired such that
Mm.
if somebody brings that kind of pressure, it would be, like parallel it with a Mustang who, just
Yep.
came in off the range, and you come in and apply pressure. They can run, but they're not learning anything, you know, and
Yep.
they can do stuff, but it doesn't mean anything. And the moment that they see a way out, they're going to take it and go eat grass because that feels good. That was me, right? And so I got
Yep.
labeled as lazy and like, oh yeah, Kerri's not willing to work hard. Kerri's not willing to do the work. But from my perspective, the work I was doing was looking for what's true. Like, okay,
Yeah.
if you're going to drive me with a whip, why? Where's that motivation? What's important? What's so important about this that you need to drive me with a whip rather than sit and listen to each other?
Mm-hmm.
So what motivates me, honestly, is the spaciousness of listening. And
Uh,
everything that I do is to, and it's funny saying this because it's like articulating in this moment, but everything I do is to create the spaciousness of listening,
mm-hmm.
because in that spaciousness is where everything happens spontaneously. It's going to happen this way. It's going to happen that way. It's going to go this way, I don't know, forward, backward, it doesn't really matter. But that's where things can move. So like learning, there are a few online courses that I have engaged, and when I go into it, my little kid conditioned mind says,
Mm.
okay, I'm going to do the whole thing this time. And I'm going to be a good kid. And
Yeah.
I'm going to da 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 da. And then I'll watch like the first section of it. And here's what it's like for me. I'll watch the first section and I listen linearly, but more than that, I feel in my body like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what does this information feel like? How does it integrate with the way I walk in the world? Not with what I already know. How does it integrate with who I am and what me, big me, feels like? What does it bring me into the absence of conflict, or does it create more conflict? And so
Mm-hmm.
often what I find, and this is true of the most recent online course I engaged with, I watch up to a certain point, and then this feeling comes of like, ah, got it. Now, that's a feeling in my body. It doesn't mean I have engaged all of the content, right? It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean I've listened to all of the lessons. It means I've come to a place in my body where my body says, that's what we came here for.
Ah.
And
Yes.
after that, it would take a whip to get me to go back. And I don't do the whip anymore, you know?
No.
I just can't do, like, it doesn't help anybody to whip myself into action. Instead, what
Mm.
I do is I honor, like, okay, even if my brain doesn't understand what I just got, what I just came here for, I honor the feeling of it, and I give myself the space to move on to the next thing that's presenting, whether it's my own work, whether it's the next
Mm.
phone call that comes in, or the next email to respond, or the next client, right? It's about
Yep.
honoring that communication that said, yes, absolutely engage this course. And boom, that's why we engage this course. Now let's take that and run. And, now I have so much compassion for that wisdom within
Mm.
me.
Mm.
When I was in college, and you're supposed to not know anything that wasn't taught to you, um, my questions were not appreciated because the answers weren't in the textbooks. And people would say, "Oh, Kerri, I'm going to teach you how to lunge a horse." And I'm like, for those of you who can't see me on video, I just rolled my eyes a little bit, right?
She sure did.
And so I would stand in the middle, and they're like, no, you need to hold one arm like this and the other arm like this. And they're giving me the mechanics. And meanwhile, they have completely missed 8,000 communications from the horse,
Hmm.
and they weren't
Yep.
speaking of it. So I didn't go back to their teaching. And, I got labeled belligerent and unwilling and, hard to teach and all of this stuff. And
And we
it
heard
wasn't.
those words before describing, horses, right? So often.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. When
Hmm.
really, I'm actually very easy to teach when you're actually teaching and not dominating. And when you're in, what if this leads me to this? What if when we say teaching now in this new paradigm, where we're much more aware that life is about self-awareness than it is about controlling others? What if teaching is actually simply sharing my awareness, sharing my knowledge, sharing, like, well, here's what I've experienced, and here's how I've broken it down, and here's what I found works and what
Hmm.
doesn't, and here's how I listen. All of that it takes self-awareness. And yes, of course, I might have facts and details and knowledge that you hadn't heard yet, and you might have the same. You might have things I haven't heard yet. And what a beautiful exchange that is, rather than I'm, I'm on a higher pedestal than you, so perform to my satisfaction, lest I kick you out of the kingdom, kind of a thing. And when I stopped kicking myself out of the kingdom, trying to decide that I wasn't good enough because I couldn't perform or couldn't stick with something, instead of kicking myself out of the kingdom, I started looking and saying, okay, well, I got that feeling, and that feeling happens every single time.
Hmm.
Like, I engage with something, I get that feeling, and almost invariably a day or two later, I'm presented with somebody who needed exactly what I felt.
Yes, right? Right?
So this became the universal
Uh-huh.
acknowledgement that, like, beloved, it isn't about performance. It's about engagement. It's about listening. It's about receiving. It's about awareness and spaciousness to
Mm.
recognize when my higher consciousness acknowledges, boom, that's what we came here for. Let's go. And it's a totally different existence. Um, when they talk about, like, effortless, that
Mm.
that's where things really start getting effortless.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Well, number one, I'm letting go of guilt for not finishing online courses.
Excellent.
Thank you. That's happening. right now. And not finishing nonfiction books. Like, I cannot finish a nonfiction book.
Yeah.
But
I'm
often it's because, I get to chapter 3 and I'm like, bam, there it is. That's what I needed.
Yep.
Just like you said. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, the book is there if you ever want to go back. It's not like,
Totally.
Mission Impossible, where this book will self destruct in 5 seconds if you don't finish every chapter, right? The
Yep.
information, that's the thing. Linear information will be there. It's not going anywhere. You can always,
Googleable.
like, yay, Google, thank you for that. And,
Mm-hmm.
or books or whatever, it's not going anywhere. But what if the real gold is in recognizing how I relate to that information, how it puts itself into play through my unique
Mm-hmm.
expression? It's kind of turning the tables, right? Rather than trying to make myself be worthy of the information. It's like I can take this information and watch my own uniqueness, bring it to life like a magician, like a
Mm-hmm.
musician in the world.
I mean, it's so true how sometimes it's like those pieces fall into place. And like you say, the next day, it's relevant,
Totally.
in a session, in a conversation, in a talk with a friend, or, whatever, or like in your relationship with your horse, or, it shows up. It's like, let's put this into practice, Yeah. Mm,
And
mm,
very much with the horses, because they're not thinking about these things, right? They're just going along and going, all right, well, this is how it is, everybody. Happy to see you. And that having a relationship with that spaciousness of, you could call it surrender,
mm,
right? Surrendering everything that I might try to control. Like, surrender is not waving the white flag and giving up. I mean, that's the military approach to surrender, and humanity's been stuck in that for a long time. But what if surrender is simply the, like, handing over the things I can't control to a benevolent universe that already has it well in hand? And it just means I get to also surrender my opinion of how it unfolds, right?
mm,
Whether it's good, bad, right, or wrong. And just for clarity, opinion is the same thing as judgment, right? So if we surrender our opinion of judgment and we just don't judge judgment, it makes it much easier to recognize where judgment is running the show and go, whoa, 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 whoa. Does judgment create space for my pony, for my client, for myself? Or can I, even for a moment, surrender the opinion that something should be different than it is?
mm, mm,
That creates the space to actually see and hear and engage the music of the moment.
mm-hmm. I think, there will be a few people out there. I always see this with clients when I talk about surrender. They're like, ugh, like they kind of, a lot of them will reel back. They're like,
Yeah.
it produces this kind of visceral sense of like a giving up of something that hits people, you know.
What it hits is the ego, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
The ego translates surrender as a failure, really. And all it really
Totally.
means, okay, good, if we call it a failure, what did you fail to do? You failed to control the universe, right? And egos like to think that they're powerful enough to control the universe. It's sweet, really. I mean, it's adorable, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really serve when we know we're on a journey that wants to create space for life to unfold with grace and for
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, traumas and ailments and hiccups and misunderstandings to reharmonize themselves. And
Yeah.
that really is what happens when we walk with an awareness to surrender every attempt to control. And by that, just saying, okay, I'm not going to even try to control this. I will show up. I will bring my body. I will bring my heart. I'll bring my presence. I will bring love, but I will surrender control. That
Mm.
gives you all the freedom in the world to act in a way that supports and amplifies the harmony, right? So surrender, in a way, you could say it's the opposite of failure, but that's going to make an ego feel pretty itchy. But when I really do surrender something, you just watch what it feels like. You just for 10 seconds stop defending, put down the sword, put down the shield for 10 seconds and watch and see for yourself if life continues to happen, if the ego is not micromanaging the universe. You can start to actually prove it to yourself. Life's pretty awesome in a state of surrender.
Mm.
And watch how your horses respond, watch how your clients respond. It's part of why the ponies are so facilitative. It's because they exert no energy to control anything, to control the
Mm.
universe. They just show
Mhm.
up and say, here's me, and here's how it feels to be me. And this is what I'm going to do because this is how it feels. That's my kindergarten interpretation anyway.
This is how I'm inspired to move at this moment.
That's right.
Yeah.
And because it's right there, it's happening, right? You can't deny it. They're kicking. Great. That's how they're feeling right now. in And then the more I just don't try to control it, but instead operate from my own self-awareness. So for example, am I available to be kicked? Well, maybe, maybe not. And so I always have the freedom to move my body out of the way, right? Which is really very, very different than going in, with ropes and whips and spurs to try to preempt the horse and tell the horse, you will not kick me, which really only makes them want to kick you. And so it's organizing yourself differently, like living in a relationship with surrender. It's a very different existence than trying to get things right and trying to manage the world and trying to be a good person and trying to be a good facilitator or a good female or a good male or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's it's almost turning things inside out and being willing to ask, who am I next to this horse? What am I bringing to the conversation? And then you have to just let things unfold as they do. No mental treatments, or it's not a mind treatment when you really do show up. It's instead saying, okay, I'm going to bring as much of myself here as I can. And then I'm going to watch what unfolds around me. And thank God I just, listened to that last chapter of my online course because that's relevant right now. That's the integration of it, where you don't deny the mind, but you take command of it. And
Mm.
you let the mind begin to serve the heart. And that's when magic really starts to unfold.
Mm. Mm. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Just having a little moment here.
It's fun, huh?
It's so fun. I mean, as many of my listeners know, if they listen to my last podcast, like I've been through 4 months of the most intense surrender of my life up until now. And it was so interesting in the hospital because there's this type of surrender where stuff is happening that you really don't want to happen. Like, I think I mentioned I'm needle phobic. Every day there would be a lab tech come in to take my blood. I just spent the entire time I was there with a needle in my arm, two needles in my arm, actually. So in the hospital was like, okay, I can rip all this stuff out and go home and possibly die, which would suck. Or
Less fun. Less fun.
or I can surrender to this is the way forward right now for me. It sucks, but it is these people are coming with their hearts and they're here to care for me, and they carry knowledge that thankfully knows how to deal with infections and
Right.
weird stuff that is going on, and they can help me, and so this is good. So there was this intense level of surrender that occurred, and one of the things that happened was that I was so sick that I couldn't do my regular brain thing where I catastrophize and I control stuff and I worry and I do all
Right.
the human things.
Right.
I was so sick that I literally it was like my best meditation ever. I was just there in the moment, concentrating on my breath, feeling like, yeah, it was just this sense of this simplicity in that moment. And I'm
Mm.
actually super grateful for that,
Mm-hmm.
because I think if you were, really, if your brain worked really well in those kind of moments, like, and was able to kind of grasp what's going on, it would have been a really different experience for me. But
Mm-hmm.
I was actually so kind of at peace with it all, and very just in trust and in like, okay, this is the road forward for me. There is no other road forward right now.
Yes. Yeah. It's beautiful. Like, I don't know, it might sound really weird. I absolutely love those moments too, where every opportunity to create some perception of comfort is gone because you
Yeah,
can't escape what is happening. And that
you're in it.
simplicity that you talk about to me is so beautiful. And I mean, bless our hearts for sometimes we got to go to that extreme, to experience the simplicity. And I don't think that that is necessary. It like, not that you chose to have abscesses in your pelvis. It's not what I'm saying, but like the more we play with that kind of simplicity on a day to day basis, the less likely we are to find ourselves in an extreme where we are forced to that level of simplicity and surrender. There's an experience I had in 2015 where I was in the Bahamas and we went down there to swim with dolphins. And the first day, like the whole group of people, we got to the house, we threw our stuff down and put our suits on and ran out to dive in the water. And I go swimming out into the water and the water was prickly. And I'm like, wait, is the Atlantic Ocean prickly? I mean, the Pacific Ocean's not prickly. Why is the Atlantic Ocean prickly? And it turned out I swam into a cloud of jellyfish larvae,
Jellyfish. Oh no.
which is neurotoxin. And so I spent the next 4 days unable to think straight, in extreme pain, wondering why my hands and feet were turning purple and just not being able to figure it out. Right. But I had gone down to the Bahamas already surrendered to love. Like the whole reason I was there was a gift. Somebody gifted that trip to me, and it was completely born of love. So I had a pact with my heart and with the whole universe on the way, just to go, okay, well, let's see what love wants for me in this environment. So, it was hot and humid and uncomfortable in many dimensions. And we're, 60 miles from the energy of the Bermuda Triangle. And there was just all sorts of stuff going on. And then all of a sudden, my body is having a massive allergic reaction that I couldn't cognitize. So I'm sitting around and I'm like, literally, I'm like looking at the palms of my hands. And I said to my friend, Eric, I'm like, do you see this? Or am I making up that my hands are purple and swollen? And he's like, yeah, I see it. And I'm like, okay, well, somebody else has seen it now too. And that was as close as I got to thinking there might be a problem, right? Like 4 days in, I'd been laying on the couch and just totally surrendered. Like, okay, well, literally, if this is my last day and I die in the Bahamas swimming with dolphins around, surrounded by people who love me, okay, I'm all right with that. um, and it got to this point where it just the pain was pretty wild. But all I really knew how to do was say, all right, well, that hurts. It's all I really could do. But then the moment came when I recognized I wasn't thirsty, and I should have been thirsty. And I wasn't hungry, and I should have been hungry. Like I hadn't eaten for a day and a half. And like I should feel hungry, and I don't. And that was the time something in me said, okay, it's time to take a little action. And so I took a Benadryl
Yeah.
and slept. And then that led to the next day going, excuse me, going to the clinic and getting a shot of cortisone. And that brought down all the inflammation, um, which was very nice to have that little bit of relief, right?
Hmm.
And so that day, excuse me, I got back from the doctor's and sat down on the couch, and like I wasn't going anywhere after that. Everybody's like, Kerri, we're gonna go swim with the dolphins again. You should come. You're feeling better. Come, come, come. I'm like, no, 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 no. You will find me on this couch when you return. And so they left. And here's what the surrender brought me in those moments. And I really feel like, this journey being so conscious, like whatever happens, really genuinely, literally, okay, okay, whatever happens, show me who I really am. Show me what love has for me, regardless. Um, Everybody left, and I literally just sort of fell over on my right side on the couch and went to this place of consciousness where everything was gold. And I really feel like it's just expanding into one's true self. And like no wall, no ceiling, no floor, just gold. And from the distance, this tablet came zooming toward me, and it had all sorts of printing on it. Like kind of like cuneiform, but simpler than cuneiform. And it's like it stopped right here and for me to read and get the wisdom from it. And it's like, okay, do you see that? And I acknowledged, yeah, I see it. And whoom, it just became part of me. And then two more. And it was the most exquisite remembrance. It was like an upgrade, an update, information, that just to honor, like, oh, thank you for being here. Here's some more information for you. So that by the time my friends came back from swimming with the dolphins and the sharks and everybody and the sunfish and everybody, um, they walked in there like, oh, Kerri, you should have been there. And I'm like, no, 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 you should have been here. Like the real here. That's kind of an extreme uh, journey and a very, very broad consciousness. But having a relationship and letting things be what they are, whether it's painful or joyous or exquisite or ecstatic or mundane. Like a lot of people avoid mundane as if it's a failure. If I'm not having the same extreme, experience as I've heard somebody else, and then I'm doing it wrong. No, please celebrate mundane.
Oh,
Celebrate
I
that you
love
don't,
mundane.
right?
Mundane is my best friend.
Oh my,
Oh
that's
yeah.
chop wood, carry water. That's the point of chop wood,
Oh
carry
yeah.
water, is celebrate what is happening right in front of you. And if the mind and the ego come in to say, oh, this isn't enough, you haven't done enough, it should be blah, 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 that's what you surrender. You surrender all of the
Yep.
whips to be
Yep.
available to what's exactly happening. And this, yeah, gush, gush, gush. I could go on and on and on, because this is my whole life at this point, is just witness and celebrate.
Diva was subjected to my inadequacy
Yeah.
by me plunging us into clinics and experiences and trail rides that were beyond our means and
Yeah.
all these things that were so, it was like I had to prove myself by stretching us like well
Yep.
beyond
Yep.
what we were actually ready for, capable of. And I see the marks on her now from that. Like it makes me so sad, or I feel so sad when I see that.
Mm.
Those places where I stretched her, our nervous systems to well beyond capacity in a bid to have some form of approval from who I don't even know,
Yeah.
and so this kind of piece comes in of like, okay, that way of being leaves marks on our own nervous systems
Mhm.
and on our horses and, potentially on the people around us, right?
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying right now. It just makes me think about how there's so much to be learned from just being around somebody who's comfortable in their own skin, who isn't driving themselves to prove they can stretch, because they know if stretching is is going to happen, they've got the tools they need to handle it, right? Like we
Yeah.
don't. And I think for me it was that for a long time, trying to prove to a world that values suffering, frankly,
Yeah, really. Enduring
endurance, yes,
all sorts of stuff.
right, trying to prove that I have the chops, that just because I
Absolutely.
work differently than the rest of them, or the ones that were immediately surrounding me, just because I'm different than them doesn't mean I can't uh, function in this world. And it's not,
Hmm.
nobody's asking us to prove, well, that ego, that domination, that the system that generates trauma is the only one asking us to prove ourselves. The system, the intuitive connection, harmonic system that has been guiding our hearts to a greater light has never asked anyone to prove themselves. In fact, the heart that we connect through with the horses, the heart that the horses offer back to humanity, it doesn't ask anybody to prove anything. It just wants to acknowledge, there you are. There you are. There you are. And all the work you've been doing, even the linear stuff, even the mental knowledge that you are offering your community, it's as far as I can see, it's been offered in a way that acknowledges this is the data, but the real work happens in how you apply your data. And that
Hmm.
asks for self-awareness.
Hmm.
And self-awareness is what all of life is asking humanity for, right? So when I let myself be organized to prioritize self knowledge, I am changing the world. I am creating an entirely different world. And it might look very, very, very mundane, but you'll know it. You'll know something will shimmer in front of you, and you'll go, oh, that's different. Or you'll have a client
Yep.
go through
Yep.
something so chunky and horrible, and they disappear for a while, and then they call you back and you can feel they're in a completely different space, and they're like, oh my god, I have a new question. Boom. That's everything. That's the whole
Mm.
journey. And
Mm.
creating that spaciousness, right, it makes me available to see it when it's happening, rather
Mm.
than constantly saddling myself with the responsibility to make it happen, or micromanage the universe so the universe evolves. No, that's recreating trauma again.
Yeah. Let go of the strong arming.
It's an option.
It's an option. I like it personally.
Yes.
When
Me.
I compare it to kind of ways that I've lived in the past, it's like, Ooh, this is lovely. I kid you not, so I've been off for 4 months almost now, or was. I went back to work this week. It's so exciting. And it felt like the right, it was like, this is where I need to be. And how cool that my clients just like came out of the woodwork. It was like all of a sudden everybody's like, oh,
Yeah.
this is the time. It was so cool. But we talked a little bit about before the podcast about the sense of slow and easy. And I look back on my life, Kerri, maybe you can relate. Like I've been working since I was 13.
Yeah.
I started mucking stalls and barns at 13 and working horse shows and then on and on and on. I worked all through university. I never stopped. And to take 4 months, like where I was like, I am not working. The caveat is I did run one course and I explained that in my other podcast.
Yeah.
But that was great. It kept my brain online. It was good. But
Right.
other than that, I just let it go. And it was the most beautiful, mundane time I have ever had. I didn't leave
It's
home.
so
I
good.
couldn't. I
Yeah.
couldn't for chunks of it. And I would just sit in the garden and watch the bees and the insects. And I would just like literally watch things sprouting
My God,
in
that's
my
amazing.
garden.
Yeah.
And I would go to the farm and I couldn't actually muck or like do things because couldn't lift. So I would just stand at the fence or sit. I would often sit in the paddock, which I encourage so many people to do, but I don't always do it a ton. And I would just hang out and just watch my girls. And honestly, I was like, will I ever go back to work?
Oh, I love
Like it
that.
was so blissful. I
So,
read so many books. Um, yeah, I
so
read
that
so many books. Yeah.
that feeling, that question of will I ever go back to work, was that a relaxed question or was it a
It
panicky question?
was. It was a relaxed question, which was so lovely to feel. It wasn't like I have to go back to work.
Yeah.
And that was I know that I'm privileged in that space. I was in a good position to be able to take the time and really give it to myself, like really take that time off and
Without fear of survival.
without fear around survival.
Yeah.
And that was big. And I know that's not the case for all people, but I'm so grateful that I had that time because it reset everything. Like when I first came out of the hospital, I couldn't sleep. My nervous system was just
Mm.
all over the place. Now I'm sleeping like 9.5 hours a night, 10 hours. Like, oh, 9 p.m. It's
That's
Alexa's bedtime.
oh,
It's fantastic. So yeah, I am embracing the mundane. It is like the most exciting thing when I go out in the garden. I'm like, there's a zucchini and there's like a thing and I grew this whatever, it's fantastic. It's like excitement like I've never known, Kerri, and I'm grateful. Because I
oh,
think there would have been a time in my life where I wouldn't have been able to enjoy that. I would have been like, oh my God, my life's so boring.
yeah.
What are they gonna think?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh yeah, it's
They
so nice.
they think so many
They
things. We're so worried about what they think, isn't it? They are so judgmental.
Yep. Yeah.
It's them. It's them, not me.
It's
It's them.
them. Totally. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
Embrace the boring people. Boring is great.
Oh
Mundane,
my God.
fantastic. Letting
Yeah.
yourself slow down that much. Oh,
There's a teacher who I really love. He was an Indian man. He died in like 1980, called Nisargadatta Maharaj. And he's so direct. Like he makes me laugh. He's so direct with what he says. But one of the short lines he says is, "Do not become bored with peace."
oh,
Right? So many people, their egos, if we're going to be technical, peace happens, and then they start injecting like, oh, what if it doesn't last forever? Well, what if I'm faking it? Whoa, what if nobody else sees it? And it's okay. It's just an ego. And the more going back to that spaciousness and the slow and easy, having that relationship with slow and easy, allowing space to exist, you can turn and look at that ego and say, hey, it's all right. It's okay for peace to happen. It's okay to feel okay. It's okay to feel okay when there's nothing to fix. It's okay to feel okay if there's tons of things to fix. It's okay to feel okay.
Yeah.
And
It's okay to feel okay.
it's okay to feel okay, which is weird to say, but it's a freaking revelation a lot of the time, And the way, as I was listening to you talk about taking your 4 months off and really actually doing nothing, I do relate to that, but in a different way. For me, the work I've been doing since childhood is so much processing in consciousness and surviving the sensitivity and the confusion and trying to clarify the empathic information from the physical information, from the verbal information, from the telepathic information. So on that level, I've been working, probably uh, since arriving in the body, but consciously, deliberately since 11. There was not a day off from the work of seeking clarity. And in these moments that I like, what I just described when I was in the Bahamas, when you can't do anything other than what's happening, that's like a vacation from processing. And I know there are many of us, it's many people in your community, in the whole horse community and the expanded equestrian community, well, and beyond, who are so sensitive and don't realize how hard they're working just to process all of the data in consciousness so that their life can feel bearable, right? And slow and easy can feel like certain death when the way you survive is going faster than everybody else. So I just want to acknowledge that, because for me, slow and easy, man, no. Slow and easy does not exist. Because how do I know that you're saying what you think you're saying? Because you could be saying 800 different things and you wouldn't even know it. But I have to know it. And this is often what our horses, are sorting through as well, because humans go so fast, right? So, again, not in any way am I recommending people go get stung by jellyfish, right? To have an experience. This is
Or
not
grow
what I'm saying.
abscesses in their pelvis,
No, I wouldn't
Don't do
recommend
that.
it. I wouldn't know.
Don't do that.
No. But we don't have to go to these extremes when we're willing to play with this question of who am I in relationship to slow and easy? Who am I if
Mm,
slow and easy
mm.
is not a threat? Like who am I if slow and easy actually wants to express itself? And this is, I actually just wrote about this in my newsletter this month, and it's the topic of our online uh, gatherings this month is slow and easy. But I learned about this from a chiropractor years and years ago, who was like the most gentle human being I had encountered to that day. And he was shipped off to war. He was a sensitive guy that just wanted to live out in nature. And then he had to go to war, and it left him in tremendous poverty of self and in so much pain. He ended up crossing paths with a chiropractor that became his mentor, and afterward discovered the joy of assisting others to wholeness, right? But when I met him, I was in this marriage that was abusive in almost every direction. There was never any physical beatings, but aside from that, it was rough. And I would sit there and talk to him and tell him like this and this and this, and I don't know what to do. And what about, and he would just smile and his eyes would smile and he would lean back in his chair. His desk is like littered with charts and folders and papers and receipts. And he had 100 phone calls to make, and he would just sit back and he'd smile. And he would just sort of look down in that contemplative way. And all he would say to me is, slow and easy, Kerri, slow and easy.
Mm,
It'll all get done.
mm.
And of course, I'm like, what
Wow.
does that mean? And that, like, how do you do slow and easy? But he always met me with the same presence, that
Mm,
frequency. Slow and easy, Kerri, slow and easy. It'll all get done.
mm.
And it took years. I mean, that was such a gift he gave me, that feeling, the
Yeah.
feeling. It wasn't a linear learning that I got from studying data and studies in science. It was the learning of being in the presence of somebody who knows, who knows what he's saying, who
Mm,
knows himself, and he's sharing himself. Slow and easy, Kerri. It'll all get done.
mm.
And
Wow.
that has been with me since forever, since then,
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to uh, inform, offer itself into every expression of my being. And it's very literally now starting to come to life in my world, even when the ego does pop in and go, "Ooh, it's like, oh, it'll all get done.
Mm,
Huh.
mhm,
That is some of the most, that feel is data,
mm.
right? That's some of the most valuable data that I've been offered, that I have to offer, is how slow and easy informs life.
Yeah.
Not just my life, not just what I do. It's not about Kerri, it's about life. It's
Mm,
about an us. How that feeling informs us as a community, as a species, as an interspecies community, as a writer, whatever label you want to assume at any time. There's the data of slow and easy. It'll all get done.
mm,
And
mm.
playing with that, being in the presence of that, um, I don't know, it brings me to tears because
Yeah.
it's just so kind, and it is truly one of the greatest gifts um, that I've ever received and acknowledged and truly welcomed into my world.
Wow, Carrie, that was really a beautiful sharing. And yeah, it's really hitting me in the heart as far as all the things that you shared in our time together today. And I'm thinking that it's probably going to do the same for our listeners, whoever's listening out there. And just, I don't know, it might be like me where I have to go back and listen to it a couple of times to really
Yeah.
mine all the gold. So thank you so much for that, and for being here again today.
Oh, thank you so much. I do hope people listen to it more than one time, because you get to feel different parts of yourself when you listen different times. That's the words are going to be there, the frequencies are going to be there, but you get to feel more of yourself each time you visit, because you're a different version of yourself every time you visit. So it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yay. I'm sure there will be people out there that will be doing just that, and will be maybe even reaching out to you, Carrie. So how do people get in touch with you?
Thank you so much. The best way is through my website, kerrilake.com, KERRILAKE.com. And there's plenty to read there. There's links if you'd like to work together with me one on one, which is always just so much fun. There's a link that you can book yourself right into the calendar if you know you're ready for that. There are online courses that I'm actually very excited about. There's one we just did as a live interactive class called Courage to Feel. And it's not a linear learning. It explores perspectives about familiar things like emotions and empathy, like judgment and discernment, like uh, uh, intuition intuition and empathy. Like the relationship between emotion and feeling. So it's really creative, and I'm really sort of gobsmacked when I go back and I look at it. I'm like, whoa, yeah, that was good. So that's available on the website as well. And there's also an events tab. We have actually a few more in-person events coming up this year in different
Nice.
places, including Australia and Colorado and Oregon. So yeah, have a look, and always, I hope people always know they're just write to me. Like, let's be humans, um, and play together. You know, share our play together and share our wisdom together so that everybody can expand. That
Hmm.
to me is the name of the game at this point. And yeah, some of us are further along the journey than others, but that doesn't make anyone less valuable than another. It's sharing our insights that sparks further insight and further clarity. So that's the whole point behind everything that I share anyway. So thank you, Alexa, for
Hmm.
the opportunity.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you for all of that. And yes, everyone, I highly recommend working with Kerri. She's awesome, as you can tell, and she's going to be joining back in for the fun with Whole Horse Apprenticeship here coming up shortly. So we start September 15th, which is so
Amazing.
exciting.
Totally.
And yeah, yeah. And if you want to join us, it's www.alexalinton.com/apprenticeship 2022 if you want more details on that. And yeah, I think that's about it for now. So, signing off here. Thanks everyone for listening in. And thank you, Kerri, again for taking the time of being with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Alexa. It's fun. I'm totally looking forward to the apprenticeship. Can't wait to see who's there.
You too. Okay, we'll see you soon. Bye for now.